time now for a new day in our politics, and it is an honor and a privilege to be a part of a movement that has fought every single day to bring that day forward.
It's a beautiful day. Get out and vote. The most important election of my lifetime.
This is Today As It Happened. Good Tuesday evening to you. I'm Holly Furfer, here with your chronological look at the biggest events and stories on this election day. From the mayoral race in New York City to the governor's races in Virginia and New Jersey. Up first, our Deputy Political Director, Joe St. George, gave us the lay of the land as Americans across the country cast their votes in key state elections. Live from a polling station in Fairfax County, Virginia. And Joe, plenty of headlines on this election day. Let's start maybe where you are in Virginia.
Well, good morning, Holly. There's nothing quite like an election day in this country, right? It's the one day a year we don't have to focus on polling or surveys. We're going to get actual results, a real pulse of the American electorate. Yes, not every local community, not every state's doing elections this year, but there are still major contests for this technically off-year election. And in fact, in many parts of the U.S., doesn't feel like an off-year at all, especially in Virginia and in New Jersey. These are the two states where we have gubernatorial elections to watch today, and it's already a historic gubernatorial race. We have races in Virginia that will produce the first female governor in the Commonwealth of Virginia's long history. New Jersey's already seen record-breaking amount of money being spent. Now, the early voting data suggests that Democrats, that Spanberger in Virginia, that Mikie Sherrill in New Jersey have the advantage going in to this election day. Early voting data suggests that these are states, after all, that voted for Kamala Harris last election, not President Trump. But Republicans are cautiously optimistic. I mean, here in Virginia, you do have a relatively popular governor in Governor Glenn Youngkin, a Republican governor. Perhaps his popularity could propel his lieutenant governor to the top job after tonight. But polls again show the Democrats with the advantage. In New Jersey, I was talking to one Republican source who says there's just a lot of frustration with the leadership at the state capitol after years and years of Democratic role, if you will. They think maybe an upset could be possible in New Jersey today as well. We had a chance to speak with voters here in Fairfax County, Virginia, always a key area of the state. A lot of government workers here, and not surprisingly, the government shutdown was on the minds of at least one voter we spoke to this morning. Take a listen.
I voted for Mrs. Sears. Her values tend to align more closely with mine. Traditionally, the Republican Party has been more fiscally conservative, although that's not entirely true at this point. Have you seen the debt recently?
I voted for Abigail because I do believe she's a strong protector of children, and I don't believe all of the propaganda. The government shutdown and just basically the undeniable allegiance to the Republican Party, whether they're right or wrong. I don't like that. I like in the middle of the road conservative Democrats, in the middle of the road conservative Republicans.
All right, so we heard the government shutdown there. Also, she told me a little bit later in the interview that she voted for the Republican for Attorney General. Split ticket is a possibility here, where maybe a Democrat wins the governor's race, but Republicans win the AG race. There's the current Republican incumbent running for re-election. That's one storyline that we'll be watching throughout the day. We've got to talk, though, about the New York mayoral election. New York City is, after all, New York City. It is the biggest city in our country. The bright lights are always shining, and boy, have the lights shined on this mayoral election between Zohran Mamdani, the Democratic nominee, and Andrew Cuomo, the former Democratic governor of the state of New York. Yes, there's a Republican candidate as well, Curtis Sliwa. President Trump has weighed in on this race. He has said repeatedly that he believes that Mamdani would be bad for New York, called him a communist, has threatened to withhold federal dollars to New York if Mamdani wins. Mamdani's leading in the polls. Mamdani could be, I mean, a lot of people are looking at him as, is he the face, the future of the Democratic Party? Young Democratic socialist talking about issues that you won't hear a moderate Democrat talk about. Rent freezes. You've talked about grocery stores being more government run. I mean, these are policies that certainly are not in line necessarily with your typical moderate Democrat, but they've resonated with a number of New Yorkers. And if Mamdani wins tonight, he will be immediately a superstar in American politics. Polls show him with the lead going into Election Day. He spoke earlier today in the Big Apple.
We are on the brink of making history in our city. On the brink of saying goodbye to a politics of the past. A politics that tells you what it can't do and really what it means to say is what it won't do. And to usher in a new era in this city where we understand that we do not get to choose the scale of the crisis we face. We simply get to choose the manner in which we respond.
What's the old saying? If you can make it in New York, you can make it anywhere. We'll see where Mamdani is and where his political star is, perhaps by the end of tonight. And real quick, Holly, need to mention the state of California. There is a ballot measure going before voters today, basically allowing Democrats in Sacramento, in the state capitol, to redraw the political maps to favor the Democratic Party, to be a counterweight to what Republicans have done in states like Texas. Governor Newsom, who's largely seen as a presidential candidate in 2028. This has been his passion project. Former Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi has been very involved as well. Polls show that passing, but again, there's nothing like Election Day. Will voters match the polls? One of the many storylines we're watching, and Holly, you know this California redistricting ballot measure, that could play a role in who decides control of Congress in next year's midterm election. So, boy, it's an off year, but Holly, we got a lot to report on this Election Day.
Just wait till next year in the midterms, Joe. All right, let's shift gears a little bit because another story that we're following this morning, breaking news, the passing of former Vice President Dick Cheney, and you know, in his role as Vice President, and I mean, he really left quite a legacy in American politics.
A consequential figure, a controversial figure. Former President George W. Bush has weighed in with a statement of his own. Of course, President Bush elevated Dick Cheney to a role that few presidents have ever done. I mean, Vice President Cheney, during the Bush years, was involved in so many decisions. This statement from the former president: "The death of Richard B. Cheney is a loss to the nation and a sorrow to his friends. Laura and I will remember Dick Cheney for the decent, honorable man that he was. History will remember him as among the finest public servants of his generation, a patriot who brought integrity, high intelligence, and seriousness of purpose to every position he held." The statement from former President George W. Bush. And look, as someone who covers politics for a living, there hasn't been a more involved, more consequential vice president, at least in my years as a journalist, than Dick Cheney. I mean, some are going to put him on the Mount Rushmore of vice presidents in terms of influence. I mean, President Bush allowed him to have a great influence on a wide array of portfolio issues, especially the war on terror, which followed September 11th. And history will always remember former Vice President, now the late Vice President Dick Cheney's role on that fateful day, on September 11th. Remember, President Bush was traveling the country. He was in Florida when the Twin Towers were hit. The Secret Service, security, moved him around the country throughout much of 9/11. It was Dick Cheney that was in the Emergency Operations Center, in the bunker at the White House on that fateful day, involved in a lot of the key decisions, and then, of course, certainly involved in the wars that followed in Iraq and Afghanistan. And that's where the controversy comes, right? Across the Middle East, Cheney was despised for leading the wars into Iraq, for what transpired elsewhere in the Middle East. He was, as we mentioned at the top, a controversial figure. In his later years, he pushed for a Republican Party that looked less like Donald Trump. It was a fight that he lost in recent years. He also advocated for LGBTQ plus rights. He was one of the most prominent Republicans to push the conservative mindset away from gay amendments to state constitutions that banned gay marriage. Remember, that was a fight happening in 2004 during the Cheney Bush years. He, in his later years, his daughter in the LGBTQ plus community, he did help move the conservative mindset and Republicans really away from that. And you don't hear any Republican really talking about that in this day and age. So a true pillar in American politics, a consequential and controversial figure, someone who served as an aide, a staffer on Capitol Hill. He rose to the ranks of congressman, chief of staff to the President of the United States, former Secretary of Defense, and of course, will forever be remembered, Holly, as the vice president to George W. Bush.
Absolutely. All right, Scripps News Deputy Political Director Joe St. George for us. Thank you as always, Joe. Coming up on Today As It Happened.
Praying you don't need health insurance. That's where many young adults find themselves right now. From Katia Tubman coming up, how young adults are being priced out of health care coverage and what they're doing to cope.
And later,
I know the president is aware of the former vice president's passing, and as you saw, flags have been lowered to half staff in accordance with statutory law.
you're watching Today As It Happened. This is Scripps News rundown of the biggest events and stories of the day, so let's get to it. Healthcare is one of the most important issues for Americans, and for many, it's getting more expensive. Open enrollment is underway for millions of Americans, but many young adults are trying to navigate the system for the first time. National correspondent Katia Tubman joins us now. And Katia, you spoke to some young adults working through this process for the first time. What did they tell you?
That's right, Holly, a lot. And young adults who've turned 26 this year are approaching what's considered a health insurance cliff, a time when many of them lose their family's coverage provided under the Affordable Care Act. They also stand to be one of the largest groups hardest hit by increasing premiums.
Right now, I do not have health insurance.
Destiny Bryson is a single mother of two, a veteran and a recent college grad who doesn't make enough to pay a healthcare premium each month. For now, her plan is to pray she doesn't need it.
A lot of hoping that nothing bad does happen. As a 26-year-old woman, I think there's like 3-4 different types of doctors I should be seeing at least annually. And I can't remember the last time I saw them. I'm like, I can't afford any issues.
Bryson is among millions of young adults who must provide their own health coverage for the first time. They're sharing their stories.
I'm looking at the health premiums for this next open enrollment. $400.
I'm currently looking at insurance options and it really sucks.
I'm not going to be able to see a dentist anymore either.
Young adults already are the most uninsured and underinsured population we have in this country.
Kristen McGuire is the president and CEO of Young Invincibles, an advocacy group trying to keep young people from living uninsured.
For now, it's about 30% of young adults across the country. So that's more than 1 in 5 young people don't have health care.
McGuire says the most affordable place for them has been the ACA. That was until the One Big Beautiful Bill did not extend tax credits that help young people afford premiums.
The bottom line is young adults rely heavily on the tax credits from the Affordable Care Act. So ending the tax credits right now would be very harmful to their livelihoods.
I've looked for second sources of income, and I've also considered re-enlisting into the military to get those medical benefits.
And any extra money, Bryson says, that would go to health insurance?
Those are like the funds that I have for like buying my kids clothes or food or daycare while I work, and those aren't things that I can give up.
Now, Holly, healthcare advocates worry that changes to the cost of ACA plans will mean more young people giving up on getting coverage and falling through holes of what was once considered a major safety net. Holly?
So, Katie, if Congress does not extend these enhanced ACA tax credits and young adults, like many other people, end up facing sky-high premiums, what other options do they actually have?
Well, before deciding to go without coverage, as some young adults have told me that they're basically trying to figure out right now. Experts say that there are a few things they can do. One, evaluate your specific health needs, deciding that you may not need everything, but you might get coverage catered to your needs. Two, see if you qualify for low-income programs like Medicaid. And then three, seeking guidance, professional guidance as to what your clear options are, because one of the feedback I've gotten is that it's very confusing, and so that would be very important for young adults to be doing right now, getting guidance. Holly?
National correspondent Katia Tubman, thank you for that information. Great story. And in other headlines, the National Rifle Association is furloughing dozens of staff and restructuring operations as it recovers from years of internal strife and corruption allegations. The changes are partly aimed at preparing for the 2026 midterm elections, when the Republican majority in Congress will be at stake. The NRA spent just $11 million in the 2024 elections, about 1/3 of its 2020 spending, and far below the record $55 million it spent in 2016. A listeria outbreak linked to prepared pasta meals has now killed 6 people and sickened 27 others across 18 states. The CDC says the contaminated meals were sold at major grocery chains, including Kroger, Trader Joe's, and Giant Eagle. That outbreak stems from products made by supplier Nate's Fine Foods, which has issued recalls. Health officials are urging consumers to check their refrigerators and throw away any recalled pasta products. And from Hollywood, Oscar-nominated actress Diane Ladd has died at the age of 89. Her daughter, actress Laura Dern, says Ladd died Monday at her California home. She was best known for playing waitress Flo in the movie Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore and the TV spinoff Alice. She earned 3 Oscar nominations, 3 Emmy nominations during her decades-long career. No cause of death has been released. Up next on Today's It Happened.
As Secretary of Defense and later as Vice President, he played a key role in shaping policy on many of the most consequential issues of his day.
Even when we have political differences with somebody later in life, you have to honor the sacrifices and the service they gave to their country, and we certainly do that.
And later,
so much of it right now, sadly, is motivated by an eagerness to stop Donald Trump. I say sadly because you don't want to think that we're voting against, but an awful lot of people are really, really upset with what he's done to make our democracy an autocracy.
Even when we have political differences with somebody later in life, you have to honor the sacrifices and the service they gave to their country. And we certainly do that for the former Vice President, and our prayers go out to the whole family.
Let me extend my heartfelt condolences, sympathies, and prayers to our former colleague, Liz Cheney, to Mrs. Cheney, and to the entire Cheney family on the passing of Vice President Dick Cheney.
Dick was a lifelong public servant who believed very deeply in our country and brought his considerable knowledge and intelligence to its service.
welcome back to Today As It Happened. All right, let's check back in on our daily briefing of today's top stories. Former Vice President Dick Cheney has died at age 84. He's known as one of the most powerful vice presidents in U.S. history, serving under George W. Bush from 2001 to 2009. Scripps News political director Andrew Rafferty has a look at his life and his legacy.
For over 40 years, Dick Cheney was one of the most powerful and controversial figures in American political life. His resume reads like an encyclopedia: Congressman, Secretary of Defense, White House Chief of Staff, and two-term Vice President to George W. Bush.
I, Richard Bruce Cheney, do solemnly swear.
In his statement, his family called him a, quote, great and good man who taught his children and grandchildren to love our country and to live lives of courage, honor, love, and kindness. Cheney was a man of the Mountain West. He came of age in Casper, Wyoming, a state he would represent 6 terms in the U.S. House. Fly fishing, a lifelong passion. But it was his impact on U.S. foreign policy that remains his most important and most controversial legacy. As Defense Secretary under George H.W. Bush, overseeing military action in Panama, and then operating Desert Storm, the first Gulf War. In 2000, he was tapped to run as vice president by George W. Bush.
In this election, they will speak endlessly of risk.
And then came 9/11 and the wars that would come to define Cheney. He drove the decision to invade Afghanistan and Iraq, using fears of nuclear armed terrorism to launch wars based on faulty intelligence that would last for decades.
If terrorists ever do acquire weapons of mass destruction on their own or with help from a terror regime, they will use those weapons without the slightest constraint of reason or morality.
Cheney faded from the spotlight after leaving office, but emerged in recent years as a fierce critic of President Donald Trump following the Capitol insurrection on January 6th.
In our nation's 246-year history, there has never been an individual who is a greater threat to our republic than Donald Trump. He tried to steal the last election using lies and violence to keep himself in power after the voters had rejected him. He is a coward.
To punctuate that broadside, Cheney announced he would be voting for Kamala Harris in 2024, a final twist in a long and storied career. Former Vice President Dick Cheney dead at age 84. Andrew Rafferty, Scripps News Group, Washington.
Coming up on Today as It Happened.
So I think Jack, he's all in, having been through previous elections. He wants it. Third time's the charm, and I think he's going to win.
I'm going to be honest. I just feel she ain't Donald Trump minion. That's why I voted for her. And hopefully she can help people.
Do you think that this election is largely about President Trump and a kind of a performance review?
Hello. You said it, yes.
Glad you're back with Today as It Happened. I'm Holly Furfer here with your daily rundown of today's top stories.
Well, today is Election Day. Voters are heading to the polls. It is the first major election day since President Trump returned to the White House. The biggest races are for governor in Virginia and in New Jersey. Republicans in both states have aligned themselves with Donald Trump, betting his big win last year will propel them to victory. As for Trump, he has stayed off the campaign trail. The results will likely be seen, though, as a referendum on his early presidency. In New York, history could be made if the polls are correct. The city there will elect a Democratic Socialist. Zohran Mamdani could become the city's first Muslim mayor as well. Scripps News national correspondent Alex Miller is live in New York City with the very latest. And Alex, what is the state of this race heading into Election Day?
Well, Del, this is one of the most competitive races that New York City has seen in recent history. More than 735,000 people cast their ballots just in early voting alone. That is an incredibly huge number when you look at past elections here. We had 151,000 people voting just on Sunday. We've also seen the median age of voters lower. According to the Board of Elections, typically we see older voters really turning out. At least when it comes to the early vote, that median age went all the way down to 50, which might seem still to be skewing older. But remember, those older voters, those senior voters, are usually the ones that turn out for elections. We have already seen 4 times the amount of voters that we saw in 2021. So really a huge jump here for the possibility of, as you said, Zohran Mamdani becoming the next mayor, just 34 years old. We are in Queens right now, which is the borough where he comes from, and he has campaigned a lot on affordable housing. We learned from him earlier this morning that he's deciding that he is going to vote yes on a number of ballot measures that would consolidate power when it comes to housing around the mayor. Now, here in New York City, he has campaigned on freezing rent. That would just be for rent-stabilized units. There's no cap on free market rent here in New York City, which is why we've seen such expensive rents. Rents really skyrocket since COVID. And Mamdani says he's going to freeze this rent. Now, it is important to note that there is a rent stabilization board. People have term limits, so remains to be seen exactly how he would be able to do that. But this has really been a cornerstone of his campaign. We've seen it on social media videos for well over a year now as he's talked about this issue. Now, Governor Cuomo has also campaigned on this, saying that he was once the housing secretary under Bill Clinton, that he served as governor, saying that he's the one who can build affordable homes here in New York City that would lower the rent here. Now, Cuomo got some late endorsements last night from Elon Musk and also from the president himself, who he has been at odds with over issues over the last, many years, really since the COVID pandemic especially. They went at it over that. But Trump is endorsing him. He wrote a long endorsement on Truth Social. I want to read you a couple of the highlights that I noticed. Trump said, "I would much rather see a Democrat who has a record of success win than a communist with no experience and a record of complete and total failure." He did say that New York City is the greatest city in the world, something that he has not been saying since he ran for president, because this city is so heavily blue and has been such an anti-Trump city. And he said, whether you personally like Cuomo or not, you really have no choice. And that's when he gave his endorsement. The president has also threatened federal funding here in New York City. So one way or another, it's likely something that voters are thinking about, whether they want to align themselves with a candidate who supports the president or not. It's interesting, this late-breaking endorsement. Even though, obviously, Trump is a Republican, he did not endorse the Republican candidate, Curtis Sliwa. Number one, likely because he has not been doing well in the polls, and we know that Trump likes to align himself with people who he believes has a chance to win, but also because the two have had a rocky relationship for years. Curtis Sliwa has not thrown his unconditional support behind the president, so we were not expecting him to get his endorsement.
And Mamdani identifies himself as a democratic socialist, much like AOC and Bernie Sanders. Not a communist, as the president would like to paint him. But what should the National Democratic Party be watching as it relates to other elections, and the Republicans as well?
I think we talked about this a little bit yesterday. If Zohran Mamdani is able to win, that people should be paying attention to the way that he campaigned. I mean, he came from 1% in the polls all the way to having this very likely chance of becoming New York City's next mayor. So in terms of the grassroots campaigning, the Democratic Party is likely very much paying attention to that. When it comes to certain issues that he has driven home, particularly the affordability crisis, that's also something that they are likely paying attention to. But in terms of the policies, what fits for New York City likely won't fit for middle America. So it's not necessarily the specific positions that he has taken should he win. It's more likely the tactics used. And if Cuomo is able to eke out a win, similarly, they are likely going to be paying attention to the type of candidates that they are running. Is the Democratic Party still looking for a more moderate candidate, or are they looking for a younger candidate with more progressive values?
Scripps News national correspondent Alex Miller live for us in New York. Alex, as always, thank you for your reporting.
Up next on Today's It Happened.
The recipients of these SNAP benefits need to understand it's going to take some time to receive this money because the Democrats have forced the administration into a very untenable position.
Welcome back to Today As It Happened, Scripps News debrief of our top stories of the day. So let's jump right back in.
Two men from Massachusetts are facing charges after setting off fireworks inside an empty Harvard Medical School building. No one was injured. Prosecutors say the suspects, 18 and 20, were in the area for Halloween parties. The FBI saying the men stuck the fireworks inside a locker, but says their prank was no laughing matter. The two face charges of conspiracy to damage by means of fire or an explosive charge. U.S. retailers are preparing for the holidays, the shoppers and the thieves. A new study showing retail theft and violence getting worse. The National Retail Federation reporting shoplifting incidents jumped 18% in 2024. Threats and acts of violence during thefts increasing 17%. And it's not just the individual shoplifter. Organized crime is expanding beyond store theft into phone scams and online fraud. 2/3 of retailers say transnational criminal organizations are targeting their stores. Retailers now investing more in security on the ground and in their digital space. Day 34 of the government shutdown, the Senate failing for the 14th time now to pass a short-term funding bill. Tomorrow will officially mark the longest shutdown in U.S. history, breaking the longest record held when Donald Trump was in office the first time around. Today, lots of confusion about those SNAP benefits. The president on social media writing that it will not tap into emergency funds as ordered by the courts, a day after the Agriculture Department said it would. And then White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt added to the confusion. Scripps News White House correspondent Haley Bull is live now at the White House on the North Lawn. And Haley, Caroline Levitt explaining why it is hard to get SNAP benefits or food stamps to some 42 million Americans now saying there will be a partial payment.
Yeah, Del, a big question for millions of Americans reliant on those food benefits, and the White House maintains that they are complying with the court's orders to fulfill those SNAP benefits. The press secretary saying that President Trump was referring to future payments after he wrote on Truth Social that benefits, quote, will be given only when the radical left Democrats open up government, which they can easily do, and not before. Now, the administration told the courts this week it would tap in to more than $4 billion in contingency funds as compelled to do, but that would only cover about half of recipients' benefits for the month of November. The U.S. Department of Agriculture sending states guidance this morning in line with that, as the secretary of the agency said that teams were ready to offer immediate technical assistance to states, but warned that it would be what she called a cumbersome process, and noted that what she called stopgap measures could take several weeks. The White House press secretary saying this when pressed.
No, the administration is fully complying with the court order. I just spoke to the president about it. The recipients of these SNAP benefits need to understand it's going to take some time to receive this money because the Democrats have forced the administration into a very untenable position. We are digging into a contingency fund that is supposed to be for emergencies, catastrophes, for war. And the president does not want to have to tap into this fund in the future.
Now, previously, Del, the administration did not believe they had the mechanisms for those contingency funds, but the president had sought clarity from the courts and directed his team to look at this, saying he did not want people to go hungry last week before we saw the administration confirming they would use those funds this week. But they have certainly faced pressure from particularly plaintiffs over the fact that it is not the full SNAP benefit amount that recipients will get this month. But after that Truth Social post, we also saw plaintiffs in one of the cases in Rhode Island seek to file a motion to enforce the court's order, the court giving the government by the end of tomorrow to respond. But again, Del, the White House saying they are complying with the court order and still tapping into those contingency funds, warning, though, it could take some time.
As they say in the movies, stay tuned. Scripps News White House correspondent Haley Bull live for us on the North Lawn. Haley, thank you very much.
Up next on Today's It Happened.
So you voted last year. Who'd you vote for?
I voted for Trump. Right now, it's a harsh year right now. But right now, maybe hopefully next year he got under everything in control. You know, right now with this tariff war and all that stuff.
Welcome back to Today As It Happened. I'm Holly Furfer. Let's jump right back into our rundown of our top stories of the day.
So you voted last year. Who'd you vote for?
I voted for Trump. Right now, it's a harsh year right now. But right now, maybe hopefully next year he got under everything in control. You know, right now with this tariff war and all that stuff.
So you haven't decided if you're voting this year yet. You got a couple hours. What's going through your head? What sort of issues matter to you?
Just, you know, for me, you know, just maybe a better raise, you know, maybe certain, you know, right now, how you say, qualifications, you know, for like health insurance, you know, stuff like that, you know.
Lots of eyes on the race for governor in New Jersey. Republicans believe their candidate has a chance to beat the odds, upsetting the Democrat Mikie Sherrill, who holds a slight lead in the polls. The Democrats, though, say holding onto the governor's mansion would be history in its own right. Scripps News congressional correspondent Nathaniel Reed is live at a polling location in Passaic, New Jersey. And Nate, what are the voters there telling you?
Well, voters here, this is a reliably Democratic county for the most part, up until the 2024 election, when President Donald Trump was able to flip the county from blue to red. Now, Democrats here are hoping to reverse that trend. At the same time, a lot of questions about whether this county will go back to being a blue county. We've been walking around this whole area here, this polling site in downtown Passaic City. so far only seen canvassers for one party, the Democrats. They're actually handing out these right here. They have the names of the Democratic slate of nominees, all in Spanish. This is a very heavily Latino county. It was Latino voters who propelled Trump to victory in this county last time around. But voters we're talking to saying that they believe it's more important now than ever, even on this off-year election, to come out and support their candidates. Take a listen. President Trump won Passaic County last year. I mean, do you think that Democrats can reverse that this year?
Absolutely. But everything that's going on with our country, all the false things that has been happening, he's been in about a year, it's about to be like a year and a half already he's been in office, and it's been less than a year. It's been hell. So hopefully everybody within the state of Jersey still votes blue to try to change things around, hopefully better for everybody.
Del, I can't sugarcoat it. Voters have been fairly reticent, to speak all day today. We did speak with one voter who told us that he has some reservations about Mr. Ciattarelli, the Republican candidate in this race. Jack Ciattarelli had voted in the New Jersey state legislature to raise taxes several times. That was something that his Democratic opponent had hit him on multiple times. The high cost of living here in New Jersey, it's got some of the highest property taxes in the nation. That is right at center stage in this race here. A lot of questions about whether Mikie Sherrill would be able to make history, though. Democrats have not won 3 consecutive terms for governor back since 1961. A lot of questions, Del, about whether the polling numbers we've been seeing are going to be accurate, or whether Mr. Ciattarelli, who's run now 3 consecutive races for governor, will be able to reverse the odds and win New Jersey. President Trump got close. Jack Ciattarelli got close when he ran 4 years ago. The question is, can he do it this time in 2025, an off-year election, which, of course, like every off-year election, suffers from lower turnout than the presidential or the midterms.
Nate, I'm curious. The Justice Department saying they were going to send election monitors to Passaic County where you are. Have you seen them?
We have not seen election monitors here. That being said, reportedly they were going to stay the required 100 feet from the entrance. The reason we're so far from the entrance of the polling location here, reporters, election monitors, either partisans, the folks handing out these flyers, you cannot be any closer than 100 feet from the entrance of any election facility, of any polling location in Passaic County. New Jersey counties go county by county in terms of your access to polling locations. So we have not seen them. Reportedly, there were some reports that they weren't going to go in the polling location, rather monitor from the outside. But there were concerns about the possibility, at least from Democrats, about those election monitors possibly depressing turnout here in Passaic County, a heavily Latino county. The Trump campaign, the RNC and Republicans in this state say that they believe it's an important move for election integrity. In fact, it was the state Republican Party that had requested the DOJ come here in the first place. Take a listen.
We're going to have election integrity efforts all over this state. Whatever we have to do to protect the vote, we're going to protect the vote, because we found in 2024 that when we do that, we win elections.
Gotcha. I mean, there's concerns from the Democrat in this election, Mikie Sherrill, that is going to possibly depress turnout. Is that not a concern that you share?
I don't know why protecting the vote would suppress voter turnout. Everybody, one vote, one person, follow the law, and there shouldn't be any concerns at all.
So when you talk about election fraud, I despise it. It undermines everything we try to do in this great democracy. So I do think that, I believe Jack's going to win, and I do hope that there won't be any shenanigans tomorrow.
Republicans saying that these are just common sense measures. Democrats saying that these could possibly intimidate voters who otherwise would not feel comfortable seeing election monitors coming out to vote. Granted, we've been here all day, pretty much since this morning. Not seen anyone who obviously looks like an election monitor. There has been a police presence on the ground here, mostly keeping traffic moving, but for the most part, not really seeing anything out of the ordinary. Del, it's worth noting, Passaic County is the only place on the East Coast during this off-year election that DOJ is sending monitors. They're also sending them to several counties in California, again, at the request of that state's Republican Party.
Scripps News congressional correspondent Nathaniel Reed for us live in Passaic, New Jersey. Nate, thank you very much. Meanwhile, history could be coming to the Old Dominion. In fact, it will. Virginia will elect its first female governor today, but who will she be? That is the question. There is the Democrat, Abigail Spanberger. She has been running on kitchen table issues like affordability, appealing to the nearly 150,000 federal workers in her state caught up in the government shutdown. The Republican on the right is Winsome Earle-Sears, a staunch conservative who is following in the footsteps of President Trump, hitting on issues such as transgenders in sports. Our Washington correspondent Stephanie Liebergen is live right now at a polling location in Arlington, Virginia, which is right across from Washington, D.C. Stephanie, what are you seeing?
Hey, Del, good afternoon. Well, this is a pretty strong Democratic county here in Arlington, as you mentioned, right across the river from D.C. So we have seen a lot of Democratic volunteers out here all day long, handing out sample ballots, talking to voters, making sure they know who the Democratic candidates are on the ballot here. It is the governor's race, of course, the marquee race that folks are keeping their eyes on here, but Lieutenant Governor, Attorney General, House of Delegates for the Virginia State Legislature all on the ballot as well. And for those top three races, Governor, Lieutenant Governor, and Attorney General, there's a lot of eyes on, are Democrats able to swing all three back to Democratic control? They're all three controlled by Republicans right now. Virginia state law does not allow a Republican governor to run for a second term immediately. So we always have that turnover every 4 years of getting a new governor in the mansion here in Virginia. So a lot of eyes on how well the Democrats are going to do today. Democrats, especially Abigail Spanberger at the top of the ticket, is expected to win. She has been leading in the polls consistently by a pretty solid margin. But the Attorney General candidate in the state, Jones, landed himself in some scandal for some old text messages that came out maybe about a month ago, and so that certainly is expected to hurt his candidacy and hurt his support on the ballot today. Of the voters that I've been talking to, a lot of them have been voting largely down party line. They're telling me they are always Democratic voters or they are always conservative voters, and that's how they're voting today. But I caught up with Representative Don Beyer. He was stopping by to give some support to the Democratic volunteers who were out here earlier today, and he told me that he really thinks this election will certainly be a referendum on President Trump and what's happening in the White House. Take a listen.
So much of it right now, sadly, is motivated by an eagerness to stop Donald Trump. I say sadly because you don't want to think that we're voting against, but an awful lot of people are really, really upset with what he's done to make our democracy an autocracy, ignoring the law and the Constitution and focusing all power on the presidency, just the corruption at the White House. So this is a way to stop that.
I've certainly heard some of that echoed by some of the voters that I've talked to today. I've had a couple Democratic voters talk to me and describing the Trump administration as cruel, and that's part of why they were supporting the Democratic candidates on the ballot today. I've talked to some furloughed government workers who are home without pay. I've talked to some spouses of furloughed government workers. So the government shutdown really having a big impact here in Virginia, really probably more so than any of the other states that are holding elections today, Del. So a lot of eyes are going to be on exactly what the margins are like for Democrats if they are able to win those three key posts.
Scripps News Washington correspondent Stephanie Liebergen reporting live for us from Arlington. Stephanie, thank you very much.
Thank you so much for joining us on our Election Day coverage on Today As It Happened. As polls begin to close, go to scripsnews.com for the latest election updates. I'm Holly Furfer. We hope you have a great Tuesday night.